good evening, everybody. How are you all? I'm Janet Unterschlag, and I'm here to help you out with your English. And thank you to Liberty for giving me this opportunity. Really appreciate it. Let's do a quick quiz. Do we remember what we were talking about last week? Do we remember about intensive reading? So let's just, what did we start with? We said, look at the headline, activate the neural pathways, check the vocab, look for the author, look for the date, find out more about the author. And then we started looking beyond vocabulary. And do you remember we ended the program by looking at a map? And we were looking at the Wa campus, which you can see marked there, which is in Ghana. And it really is important that you know where we are when we're talking about something. So this particular author is working at this university. So quite important that you can see Ghana and Togo and Benin and Cote d'Ivoire. And then I did a second map to show you a little bit bigger. So we've got Ghana. Let's get a color to show you Ghana. Right. So we've got Ghana over here, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Republic of Congo. The Central African Republic is sort of cut off over there. Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, the Gambia, Senegal, and of course Mali has been in the news a lot. Now, you need to follow the news. I know that sounds really strange, but like I asked my grade 11s this week, so tell me what's been happening in Mali, and I get, Mali? And I know it isn't directly related to what we are doing in class, but as I've been trying to show you, to become a good reader, you need to know a lot so that when you read something, you activate the neural pathways and a whole lot of stuff comes up in your brain very, very quickly. And then that enables you to read with greater understanding. So yes, I do expect you to know what's happening in Mali and Niger and Chad. These are, I've left out Burkina Faso. So it really is important. So yes, we're doing an article written by somebody who is an academic, who has very good credentials and is at the moment working in Ghana. But I expect you to know where we are, and I'm expecting you to recognize this as the coast of Africa. So yeah, we look at maps. It is an important reading skill. I know that sounds so strange. So we're talking here about the author. And we're told that he's also a research associate at the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment at the Wits Business School. So this is a place that we should know. So once again, what are we saying? You can be asked in an English exam, in your paper 1, do you trust this author? Do you trust this source? So that's where the author's published. And remember, I'm looking at the Conversation Africa. And you must say something like, this is what we know about the author. We've got this kind of background. Now, I know we are not often given that in an exam, but we are often given the source. And so you need to be able to say, I recognize this. Remember, where did this person get one of his degrees? Was at the University of London. And does that particular university carry weight in the world? Yes, it does. So his degree comes from a very, very well-recognized institution. So those are the kinds of things that you can be asked. Do we trust the source? Why or why not? And you need to be able to argue. And that's the kind of information you need to know. He is an applied economist with more general research interests in finance and growth economics. Now remember, I hope you didn't miss the program, but we're talking about the African Free Trade Zone. That's what we started off with the headline. So would we trust him? He's an applied economist. These interests, yes, he's somebody clearly who is an expert on this particular field or in this field and on this topic. Of course, we're going to trust him. So we come back to the headline. We looked at the free trade area or the free trade zone, and we looked at what that meant. We did some vocab. Then the game changer for the continents. Which continent? The continent. Which continent? Africa. Make that connection. Most economists see structural transformation as one of the main routes to Africa's sustainable development. What it means is changing the share of agriculture, manufacturing, and services in an economy, and its central aim of the African Union's Agenda 2063. So we've started reading the article. Now, why am I choosing this kind of article for you? Most of my students, and I know many of you, want to go on and study further. You want to go to a technikon or to a university. You need to be able to read more academic type articles. Now, these are not as difficult as the ones that you are likely to be given when you go to a university. These are written by academics, but for the ordinary person like me, am I an economist? No, I'm just the English teacher, all right? So I need something that is not so above me that I can't understand. So one of the articles that I gave to my grade 11s quite a while ago was on populism. And they were saying they really battled with that article. But I need them to see the kind of articles they should be able to cope with now so they understand, yeah, and if I want to study further, this is what I'm going to be faced with. And I've got to give you reading skills. My short-term goal, to get you through whatever exam you're writing, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. But my longer-term goal is to make you capable readers for life. So think about that. Let's come back to this. Most economists, and we did do the vocab last week, see structural transformation. Now, one of my favorite things is to look at word attack skills. I know I have some classes who groan when I say, let's do a word attack skill. But this is such an important reading skill. So you start by looking for any prefixes. What does trans mean? So prefixes usually have a meaning. Then look at the suffixes. They don't have meanings as often as they have grammatical functions. So what part of speech is transformation? With the shin ending, it's going to be right. Then we've got the form in the middle. So we have the root. So you say to yourself, what is transformation? It's forming something, but it's got the idea of a cross. So with that in your mind, you go to the context, which is here the sentence in which we find it. Most economists see structural transformation as one of the main routes, route as in, it's meant to be a minibus traveling along a road, route, to Africa's sustainable development. Okay, if we take the keywords, economists see transformation as a route to Africa's development. So what then is transformation meaning in this context? We are forming something, but we are going across from one thing to another. So it's got the idea of changing, because if we're going from there to there. We are transforming. We are this, whatever this is, let's call this Y, and we're going across to form again something over here. Well, hopefully we're not going to form Y again. Let's hope we're going to form Z, something different. Should you know the word transformation? Yes. Yes, now activate your neural pathways. We hear transformation all the time. We say South Africa is a society that needs to transform. It needs to change. It needs to form itself differently. So where have I heard this before? What did it mean? Maybe your life sciences teacher said, what about the transformation of this, whatever, creature? And it was changing from one thing into something else. Activate what's in your head and make connections. Sustainable development. So a development that we can sustain, that able to be sustained, kept going. You just don't want a development that grinds to a halt. And what it means, what is this it? So this is a pronoun. It needs to refer to something already mentioned. Surely, it's referring to the idea of structural transformation to create sustainable development. What it means is changing. Now, do you see, if you weren't able to guess transformation, here is a clue. So this is another reading skill. What have we done? We have done word attack skills. We have done context. We have looked at other things in our minds, like a taxi going along a route or transforming South Africa. And this is a fourth one. You look for a clue in the passage that will help you understand one of the words. So changing what? The share of agriculture, manufacturing, services in an economy. Now, I can't look up every single word, but this is another thing. If you don't understand what manufacturing is, if you don't know what services are, if you don't know what an economy is, although we looked it up last week, you have to look up those words. And does that take forever? Absolutely. And then you've got to learn those words. And then you've got to start using those words. And it takes a long time. It's a lot of work. I'm aware of this. But you've got to do it. You've got to put that work in. So this idea of transformation for sustainable development is the central aim of the African Union's agenda for 2063. Right. With this aim in mind, do you see the link? Now, I would like you also to try to practice what you see writers doing. With this aim, links to the previous paragraph. In mind, economists and policymakers need to know, and you make a little note for yourself, they need to know, not guess, but know. Now, something else that I'm doing is I'm writing little notes for myself. I'm marking things. Do you see? This is what we mean by intensive reading. So if you're reading for pleasure, I said this last week, you can put your hands in your pockets or hold a mug of coffee and just read. But when you are reading to try to learn and absorb and remember, you read with a pen in your hand and you're making notes all the time. So economists and policymakers need to know what determines structural transformation. So if we're going to make a change, transformation, we need to know what determines. So this is a word that you probably know differently. You probably know, I am determined. What does it mean? You have made up your mind. Do you know a word like resolute? You've made up your mind. You are going to do something. And notice we go determined. It's got 3 sounds, and we stress it there in English, determined. So this determines. Well, it can't mean it's a person who's made up its mind. It must mean something slightly different. So this is another thing. you need to be aware that a word can have more than one meaning or be used in slightly different ways. We looked at this last week, that you don't necessarily go with meaning number 1. It could be meaning number 3. Let's go back to our passage. Structural transformation, we're trying to decide what determines it. So what do you think it means? Take a guess here. They need to know what determines, what makes, what forms, what creates, what forms a basis, what allows to happen. They have flagged factors like demand for goods and services, trade policies, financial development, institutional quality, and economic integration. So if you're going to have structural transformation, you've got to look at demand for goods and services, trade policies, financial development, institutional quality, economic integration. Can I now look at flagged? So I know that when you are studying for paper 2, you do figures of speech. But you forget that figures of speech can appear in paper 1. And this is true of both home language and FAL paper 1. You can get asked to discuss the figurative language. So don't forget to revise your figures of speech before you write paper 1. So we come to the word flagged. So we do the word attack skills. Oh, yes. So you say that ED suffix tells me a past tense or a past participle. It's got a grammatical purpose. So I'm left with my root, which is flag. Okay, what is a flag? It's a flag. You know, something that waves in the wind at the top of a flagpole. So go back to your passage. They, who's the they, the pronoun, must refer to somebody, economists and policymakers. They have flagged factors. What does it mean if you flag something? Well, why do you raise a flag? A flag shows something. So if you think about maybe you've got athletics, or you used to have athletics at your school in the old normal. So let's say you're now about to run one of the races, okay? You're going to go round and round, and you've got people at different corners. The person in charge will say, "Are you ready over there?" And the person raises a red flag. Okay, we can't start yet. They're not ready over there. Possibly this is a relay race, and you need people ready at different parts. And then when they're ready, everybody raises a green flag. And the person says, green flag, green flag, green flag. Okay, ready to go. Let's have our gun, and we're going to shoot. On your marks, get set. So a flag, if you raise a flag, you are showing something, you're marking something. You're saying, hi, over here, please pay attention to me. Yeah, so you're flagging. So let's go back to our context. They have flagged factors. So that's like raising a flag, saying, guys, there's number 1. Guys, there's number 2. Guys, here's number 3. They have flagged these. They have made sure that people notice it, the way you might put some sort of post-it into your book. So please, what figure of speech have we got? It's a metaphor. Do you see how complex reading skills actually are? It's not like I'm recognizing the word with this aim. I'm recognizing with and this and aim. It is much more than that. And yes, to read really well, you need to practice. You are not born able to read, and it takes a lot of work. Think about the effort that you put in to learn to read in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3. Think about that. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears. And you had homework. Didn't you have homework every day, reading homework? You had to read so many pages, and your parents had to sign in that diary that you'd read however many pages, because reading is hard work. But if you put in the hard work, you get so much better at it, and you can read competently, and you can start developing your reading so that you can get to the level that you need to be at for whatever it is that you need, especially university. But researchers haven't closely examined the way economic integration through trade and finance influences structural transformation. So notice again, this is our main idea. We've seen that from the beginning. We've now got a but. But is a conjunction. What does it mean? It means I'm about to give you a contrast. So this is what I've been saying, but now I'm going to be saying something different. So this is flagging a different idea. Notice that but can come at the beginning of a sentence. I know that in primary school we say you can never begin a sentence with and, but, and or. We shouldn't actually make that as you can never. We shouldn't do that. It's unusual. And if you do it, I always say to my students, it's like slapping me. So don't do it at the beginning of every sentence because, oh, I've got a headache. But you can do it to make a point, to grab attention. But researchers haven't closely examined the way economic integration through trade and finance influences structural transformation. So we're looking at integration, bringing things together through trade and finance, and how that influences the main idea of our article. I, therefore, who was the I? That the author we were talking about. I, therefore, and you know me, I'm a pedant. Could I please punctuate that? Set out to study African countries' integration. What have we just said integration meant? Bringing things together with the rest of the world, and the effect of that integration on their structural transformation. This study provides fresh evidence about whether integration is good for Africa. It also unearths the right levels of integration necessary to increase structural transformation. So do you see, we've got the focus all the time. We can see what we are doing. And this paragraph tells us what the author's focus is. Bringing Africa and the rest of the world together. And if we do that, how will that create change in African countries? We've also got to look at whether it's good for Africa. Do we want Africa to be integrated with the rest of the world? And then we have unearths, figure of speech. Take a guess. It's another metaphor. You're digging up something that's under the earth. So here it is, and I've got something under here, and I come along with a spade, and I dig it up. I'm unearthing. So we've got figurative language. Now, at this point, you might say, look, I'm not interested in this article. It's not quite my focus. But at least you've got some idea. We're looking at an African free trade zone. We're looking at Africa and the rest of the world. And we're saying that Africa needs to change significantly, meaningfully. And how? And is it a good idea? And in what way? And those kinds of things. So, yes, you do not necessarily have to read right the way to the end of an article, especially if you're finding it a little dry, a little difficult. But remember, if you're planning to do a BSc, a BCom, all of these things, you're going to have to read stuff like this. And the better you are at it, the less you'll say, but I found it boring. I find so often that it's not that the passage is boring. It's that the student is battling to grasp what the writer is trying to say. And then, of course, you're bored. If you don't understand, of course you're bored. But we've got to develop your reading skills so that you can understand. And especially home language students, you can get quite challenging articles in paper one. There was one a few years ago that when I showed my family and friends, they said, wow, that's heading towards university level type article. Yes, it is. So I have no guarantee about what you're going to get. You need to be as confident as possible that you can read with understanding. So we're going to take a break, and after our break, we're going to talk about writing and transactional writing. But don't forget the reading skills.